if you're really interested in something, you'll read it. Like, I've only got into reading quite recently, and I was like that my entire life. But there's topics that interest me. So, like, there's different books that I'm really interested in at the moment. So, really big books, I can sit there and read like 8-10 hours a day if I need to.
8-10 hours, that's crazy. Yeah, I'm still trying to push through, I think, like 20 minutes to half an hour, I reckon. But I suppose it's like anything. It's a habit.
If there's a topic that like really grasps you and like something that's really interesting, like for me, that like I'm not just reading random books, I'm reading very specific books for what I'm learning, and they're just a lot more like, it doesn't take effort to read now. It's really easy.
I think the thing that gets me particularly with like some older personal development books, so anything related to learning, I suppose. A lot of them have so much preamble and story into like just getting to like the point that I want. And maybe that's just social media. That's made me very like impatient, just like wanting to like get straight to.
It is. 100%.
Tell me the thing.
1,000% it is. Yeah, that's exactly what it's like. I'm terrible with reels.
Yeah.
Terrible. You just like doom scroll all the time, but I'm getting much better at it recently, but last 2 years it's a terrible habit because you can delete TikTok, but you can't delete Instagram because you need it for business. So, responding to DMs here and there and then straight over to reels, it's just like
it's a hook, isn't it? It just draws you in. I had to buy one of them lock cases.
Mm-hmm.
You just chuck it in and then like, because where I was really bad was before bed and waking up.
Yep.
So I found that like if I can put it in there and deep work as well, but that's the main one. So I tried to create a habit around that. So like if I can wake up and not go on my phone right away, like I have to wait till 9 o'clock when I start work to like jump on it. It makes it a lot easier to not be hooked to it, I suppose. I was terrible for that. Just waking up, turn off the alarm, have a little scroll for a little bit in the morning, like an addict.
It's easy to justify too, especially in our professions of like, it's research.
Exactly.
I'm consuming, I'm learning, it's research.
Big time. Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for coming on, Connor.
Of course.
For people that don't know, I sort of got to experience your coaching when I was first starting out in business, which I even realized like how young you were, and you were like years ahead of me as well at the time as well. But I'll give you the chance to sort of do a little bit of an intro into what you do now, and I'm sure we'll go into the past later on. Yeah,
so like a little blurb about me. So I've been in the online space or making money online for the last 5 years. In the last 18, 16 months, I've been running my own education company, and in the last 12 months, we did 7 figures in cash collected with close to no team, just a YouTube channel with practically no edits, cuts, or anything like that, and strictly off of organic. And what I do in my education company is I teach people to do exactly what I did the previous 4 years, which was selling in the education, coaching, and information market. So that's pretty much about me. And I mean, if the age is relevant, like you spoke about before, just turned 24 last month. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I'm a big believer of the age doesn't matter. For me, I'm 24 now, turning 25 in March. And I've always been looked down on in my profession and stuff like that. So it's interesting to hear, that you've gone through a similar sort of thing. Was there a point for you where someone like particularly pointed that out? Or have you sort of just, the topic has never sort of been?
It's been pretty rare. I have lost a job where I think I was 20 at the time, where I was managing a sales team of 4. I got really good results for the company, but when the guy actually initially assumed I was married, it was actually when I was working with Ben. And I had a ring on my ring finger because I hadn't worn rings before. So I had it on my ring finger, and he assumed that I was married. And when he actually found out my age at a funny situation where I actually was doing some consulting with him in Tasmania, I lost the job 2 weeks later because he realized he was basically paying a 20-year-old, 25K a month. That was the only reason I can attribute to, because I just lost the job just randomly 2 weeks later with no notice. So yeah, I've had complications with it in the past, but not really many other times, because I've met all my really close friends a lot younger than me, and they're very, very, very successful, many years ahead of me.
I'm the same as Ben. I'm a big believer, and I don't think it matters. It's a funny one as well, where like there's so much proof, and like you literally were doing the job, like you're kind of getting paid what you're worth, kind of thing. Something arbitrary like that comes up. I can get it. Like, maybe like if I'm interviewing for a role, it sort of does come into account a little bit, but at the same time, I don't know. It just depends on how they come across and what they give you. But I suppose the make money online space is typically a lot of young guys, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't really see it creating issues across the board. Like, a lot of my clients are 18 to 23, 24, and they work with 7-figure, 8-figure founders, and I've found practically no issue. If you're 16, 17, maybe you might have a few frowns, but other than that, never really encountered any issues to do with age.
I think it's such an absolute game changer, and you can be like, most young people are so hungry, driven, like in the space anyway that I've seen, and their ability to learn new things, implement it, is so much so much better and faster than most other people that I've seen. But
I think even your willingness to put in like a stupid amount of hours.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, as soon as you sort of, well, particularly once you get a family kind of thing, there's a lot more, and understandably, boundaries and stuff like that come in. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that's the thing about it. If you get someone that starts young and everything, they're just so like, obviously get the right person, they're so willing to put in the time, the hours to just like do what they need to do to get better and improve.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say you find that with like some of your students?
Yeah, absolutely. Because like I mentioned, obviously, a lot of my clients on the younger side, and as you get older, you have more responsibilities, you have family to take care of, things like that, mortgages, debts, things like that. So yeah, when across the board with young people, it's like 50-50. 50% of the time they're extremely lazy, or 50% of the time they're extremely dedicated and focused. Like, just this morning on the way here, I interviewed a client, and he's making 6 figures a year as a 19-year-old. And he was talking about on the interview how he works 8, 10, 12 hours a day, right? As you get older, you don't want to do that anymore. And I think when you're younger, like, capitalizing on that is pretty important, because even being 24 now, I kind of feel it, and I know that it's going to get worse as I age to like 28, 29, 30. But I'm already feeling the mindset shift of, I used to want to work extremely hard before, but now it's like I want to put my effort into energy and actions which will be able to create more outputs with less inputs, basically. I'm already feeling it at 24, which is funny to say that, but
I think, well, when did you start? When you were 17?
Yeah, I kind of like knew about making money online around 16 and kind of messed around for 2 years. And then I actually really took it seriously around like 18, 19.
So, I mean, that's still like 6 years, nearly 7 years of like deep work in the industry, lots of learning. And obviously I know as well you're still doing lots of learning.
Yes.
After a certain stage, with particularly like your area of expertise, there's only so much better that you can get, that it does make it a little bit like, all right, I'm kind of at that stage now where I do have to work. There's only so much grind work that I can do, whereas working smarter, much bigger uptick, right? But
yeah,
I don't know. I think particularly because our podcast is tailored towards like creatives and freelancers and a lot of people getting into the space, you have to do that work early on to be able to work smarter later, right?
100%. I think that's an important thing as well, which is not only applicable to sales and particularly my business as well, is that I think a lot of people feel they need to get to this extreme, exceptional length of mastery with their skills, right? You know, for sales for a long time, I thought I had to get better and better and better and better and better. But ultimately, there was a point that I'd reached that it was really only 1% marginal gains. And it's the same thing with business in my aspect. Business is a very infinite game. There's many lessons to learn. But with what I'm doing and where I want to take things, particularly with this business, there's not so much I have to learn. It's pretty straightforward. I know how to get traffic. I know how to DM set. I know how to close. I know how to build a small team. I know how to run finance. I know how to do all these things. It's pretty simple. And I think it's sales or business or whatever it is, you don't have to continually go into this infinite hole of knowledge where you're not going to really get much returns from it, ultimately.
Because I suppose that's a trap. I mean, we've talked about that before with creatives. Like if you're a tweaker, you love to be like involved, like
100%.
Yeah.
This room alone, this started off as a sit-stand desk with a blue Yeti and like a 2006 MacBook. But it's come leaps and bounds because the knowledge required to get to this point is just endless. And I still look at this and go, oh, it's not enough. It'll never be enough.
Yeah.
But then I sit back, like even today, like I'm like, oh, the light's not working overhead. You know, my light's probably not too great because I'm sitting a little bit back further than Job. But then you sit back and you go, like, does it need to be that perfect level of capture each and every time? And like, does it serve a great purpose for what you're actually just doing?
I think I've observed that in creatives in general is they think they need to get better and better and better and better. I've got a lot of friends that are creatives, you know, videographers, photographers, things like that. And they feel like they need to get that bit better. But I'm sure you guys would know as well from like the business acumen standpoint, creatives often prioritize the skill itself of being creative in whatever aspect that is, but they usually lack the business side and the functional side of things.
Oh, 100%. We talk about it all the time on here that like there's a lot of people that like in reality maybe running a business isn't for them.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not that person that believes that business is for everyone, or maybe you just need to keep finding the right kind of vehicle that might be a better one. But yeah, I think if you're like that person that wants to just like do video editing every day or filming every day or bit of both, like you don't want to do any of that other stuff behind the scenes, like maybe you just need to find out how you can work for someone else and still maybe control your hours and everything.
100%.
I suppose for people that some of the creatives, you're in the sales space, a lot of creatives have a hard time with sales and feeling salesy.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
What would you say to someone that maybe has that sort of stigma or negative feeling around sales?
I think the first thing to think of when it comes to as like the overarching paradigm you have with sales is that if you believe your service as a creative is ultimately the best in the market, and if they go and work with someone else, it's going to do them a disservice, then you need to understand like the overarching mindset is that if I don't sell what I offer, if I don't persuade them, if I don't influence the buy from me, they're going to get a much lesser service elsewhere. And so in creative work, it might be different. But for me, the things I've sold, and particularly like my business, my company, I believe it's in my ethical and moral obligation to sell that to somebody, because if they don't, then they're going to end up working with someone else and getting a much lesser service. In my case, you know, making money online is very cutthroat. So I do generally believe in my space, I'm one of the very few people that actually can help the person achieve the transformation that I'm talking about. So it is kind of like a do or die, make or break situation. So like overarching philosophy, if you believe in what you do, it is in your moral obligation to get good at selling so that you can help the people that you want to help. It's like an overarching mindset, I would say. But a second piece of that would be that if you can't learn to influence and communicate the value and the offer that you provide as a creative, you're just going to stay stuck forever. That's just the way that it is. Even if you get good at the creative services, like we can talk about this a little bit later on, but I ran a short form content agency, and it was a very short stint. It was like 3 to 4 months that I did that. But we scaled to, $40K a month in monthly recurring revenue in 3 to 4 months. I didn't do any of the creative work because I suck at that. I had a whole team that did that. But the only thing that brought me to that level is because I could sell. And I had previous business acumen from selling with 7 and 8 figure companies. So, yeah, I mean, if you're creative and you're stuck, that is what I would focus on. Like being able to communicate what you do and the value you provide is necessary.
I feel like as well it gives you the space and the breathing room to actually get better as well. Like, I feel like when you're struggling for sales, you're constantly worried about bringing in new business, or if you are trying in that phase, you're probably bringing on some discounted clients and stuff like that because you're desperate, and then you just end up in this like working for stupid hours for fuck all pay, and in that space it's just like you can't be doing your best work either. Like you're just so constricted. I don't know, you find the same?
100%. And you tend to focus on, maybe it's what my actual creative ability was, like you're saying. It's just like, no, you're shit at sales.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't question your creative ability. You're just terrible at making sales. And I know this because I've sat down with Job a while back, and we did some like mock sales things, and he was like, "Dude, you're shit."
I didn't say that.
That's probably what it sounded like.
Yeah, it came across that way. But I'm thankful, like, because it really made me revisit how I go about it, and I've gotten a little bit better. So I'm a little less bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was way too focused on my creative ability and like, oh, I know, like they need to know the lights we have. They need to know the gear we have. And it's just like, no, just need to get better at the conversation.
100%. Yeah. Like for like a creative's context, they don't really care about the lights you have or this, that, and other thing. It's really ultimately the problems you solve and the results you deliver for. Like I've sold, $30,000 training programs before to tradesmen, and I've never picked up a tool in my life. I don't know anything about tradies at all, but they trusted me when I was selling that product to help them with their business. I didn't even tell them half of what they got in the presentation. They just cared about, did I understand the problems that they have, and do we have a very clear solution for it?
And I think like understanding the value of what you're bringing is something I think a lot of creatives do struggle with. They do get, like, it is easy to get caught up in what camera you're using, or like, what lights you're bringing, how many people are on the job, all these like extra things that, like, at the end of the day, a lot of clients aren't going to be that sure that like that gets a better result than their fucking niece or nephew with an iPhone.
Yep.
That can come along and we'll do it for $25 an hour. And like, that's like, to me, they with our sort of space as well, like with selling in the creative space, like that's part of that like marketing piece that has to be made up. Because if someone jumps on a call and they're kind of like, they're not convinced, you've got to convince them on the sales call that you're better than their 18-year-old niece, and they're dead set on that, that's going to be a very, very hard thing to overcome. So I suppose in that way, like, how do you, for some of those people that might find sales difficult and they're talking to some people like that, what's something you would suggest around that?
As in people who have difficulty of having the conversations?
I think it's more so, correct me if I'm wrong, is like, when does the sales cycle actually start? Because I think the misconception is the sales process starts in the call, but it starts so much earlier on than that. And like the strategy that someone can put in place, simple, like to really make sure that when they're on that call that they're not having to overcome,
If they feel like they're coming to every call trying to convince people, I suppose.
I think incorporation of a process before the sales call, whether or not that is middle of funnel content, right? Depending on like the value of the services and how expensive they are and things like that. But primarily that's what has worked best for me in my business is appropriately positioning the offer that I have by getting people to know, like, and trust me before they even hop on a call with me. And I'm not sure in what context you can do that as a creative, but for me, I'm so used to the leads I'm speaking to being, people who've watched my content for a while that I've struggled as a business to go to cold traffic. For the main reason being, I can't be bothered talking to those people because the people that I'm talking to already know me, they already like me, they already trust me, and they have their credit card ready in hand. So I ultimately don't even have to sell them in the first place. I could, but it usually ends up being a relatively relaxed conversation. I'm not sure on like how you can do that as a creative, but I'm sure there are processes and things you can implement depending on the circumstance of the service you provide to increase that attraction to you and your business and separate you. Because I think as a creative, it's very easy to be commoditized and look like everybody else. So think of ways creatively how you can differ from everybody else and position yourself differently so that when someone actually comes to a sales call, you have a unique proposition and you're not just the X, the Y, and the Z guy. You are different from everybody else, whether it's social proof, results, unique mechanisms, whatever it is. Again, talk about how you deliver the result. Like if it's an ad for a company, it's like, it's not just you show up with cameras, you have a process that's unique that is going to, again, position you as different than everybody else. How do you drive results? It's not the camera that you're going to bring. It's not the lighting because nobody cares about that. It's ultimately what is the outcome from your service or your product at the end of the day.
Love that. And
How do you like to navigate? Because one topic for me that I'm genuinely interested in is I had a business coach say to me that I need to stop dancing around the fact of guarantees and just, start in our offers, in our packages, start guaranteeing results. How would you see that for a creative? Because I know creatives, like you said, a lot of us aren't business minded, and we're so focused on, I can do all the video production and whatever, but they feel like they've got no control over outcomes and results. So how do you like to dance around and play around with guarantees?
Well, I think guarantees are an interesting topic. It's a tool at the end of the day, and you don't have to use them necessarily. In my business, there is no guarantees at all. I guess for me, the whole way I sell that to people, and I have my entire career, is that I got this from a mentor, is that there is literally zero guarantees in life. The only thing that's guaranteed is that you and I are both going to die, and that when we die, we're going to pay more taxes. So like that is what I tell prospects when they ask for a guarantee. From my own personal offer positioning, I have that strength and that upper hand being the founder to kind of tell them that that's kind of bullshit and it's a pretty silly thing to want. When it comes from creative work, I think it's really difficult to guarantee an outcome in the aspect of leads generated or whatever it is. It's difficult to guarantee that ultimately because you can't predict that. But what you can do ultimately is aim for a collective goal and an outcome. I think guarantees are very, very hard to rely on unless it's like timelines. Timelines is fair enough. We guarantee you get this project done in this time. But I usually wouldn't lean on guarantees too much because it usually attracts bad clients. And I don't think in most cases I haven't seen very good clients come from guarantees because they're leaning too much on you and the responsibility is very much placed on you, which should be an element, but it's all the weight is taken off their shoulders and put onto you because now you guarantee something.
I feel like the only offer that I can think of that I've seen like kind of work with that, and I didn't see all the behind the scenes with it, was an offer where they pretty much did. They as part of the thing, they were doing the ad spend, they were running the ads, they were creating the landing page, write the script for the VSL person. They'd organise that person be filmed, and they were taking care of everything from like end to end sales and even like the onboarding experience. So like it's heavy,
Wow,
very very heavy, but like that was the only way that I think they were able to really, and it was, I think part of the guarantee was also because it was based on performance kind of thing. So the guarantee was like, you actually won't pay anything because it's purely based on what we're going to bring in. That was all the steps that had to be involved for
Just
a guarantee.
Mm.
So I don't know. I'm a bit anti guarantee. I've only ever seen bad clients come on board for things like that. I haven't leaned on them too much, but maybe even like looking back at myself back when I was like in my first couple of years of business, like things that I would jump in on just because there was a guarantee. And I think also like guarantee has to really actually, not a lot of guarantees I think have weight anymore.
No,
either.
100% they don't.
There's a big trust crisis at the moment around that. Like,
Yeah.
Have you seen that a bit in the
sure? Like,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I've got competitors that guarantee stuff, but again, at the end of the day, there is a guarantee, but there's no guarantee that guarantee actually holds up. You know, like there just really isn't. In reality, are you going to pursue this person, this company in court? Probably not. Like in most cases, the legal battle is not even worth it. So, I think guarantees can be even more of an empty promise almost. It's really only a sales tactic, in my opinion, like just to get someone over the line. But like you said, someone who's attracted to that are going to be beginners and clients who aren't going to be worth it at the end of the day. So I would probably use it sparingly, rarely even if at all.
Go.
Super
go back.
interesting.
You have to go back to your business coach and tell.
Well, I've been umming and ahhing about it, but it's good. It's good to hear different opinions.
Yeah, it's a technique at the end of the day. It's something that you can use, but it's a tool, right? I just personally I don't prefer to use it.
Depends so much as well on I think this is where like it is so good to be, and again why we started this podcast, like be around more people, invite in more discussions like this, because like you can kind of get one business coach or one course if you purely rely on that and just operate off of that. Like there's no guarantee that that's going to be the best thing for your situation. Like I can see how that makes a lot of sense for like a product based business, for instance. Like you kind of can, if this fucks up, we will send you a new one. Very, very simple, or we can refund you because we didn't spend, in our case, hours and hours and lots of other people involved worth of, investment into getting you a result.
I think that's a good it raises a good question. Like, I know we've spoken about this previously, that there is so many coaches or people in that online space now that are the coach of a coach who's coached the coach.
Yes.
And they're selling the process. How, like you've been in the industry a long time now, like you must have seen, the change. How do you like to verify people that you want to spend time with, or how would someone go about, I suppose, verifying a coach or verifying something like that?
It's a great question. Over the last 5 years, I've spent like 220, 230K on different coaches and education and masterminds. And it has probably, the split has been like 70-30. So 70% of the training has been really good and really valuable and helpful and changed my life. Whereas 30% of it was the equivalent to lighting cash on fire and throwing off a big building. As the space becomes more popular and becomes more mainstream and more known, I think the online world is still 5, 10, 15 years from being accepted and normal, more traditional. But like you mentioned, there are just so many people that are coming in that are saying that they're experts, but there's not like a certification. There's not like a degree that you can do to verify that, right? kind of have to do your own research. So I've worked with coaches this year I spent 20,000 euros on, and they were a complete waste of money. Whereas I've had others that I've spent 5K and they've been absolutely life-changing and super valuable. So the way that I personally verify if I want to work with someone in the future, I have now come to the point, unless I have someone or multiple people that can refer me to that person and tell me, yes, I work with this person, yes, they were good, and yes, I got results, it's pretty rare that I'm actually going to work with them. I'm very careful with that nowadays, but when you're kind of first like getting started out and you're doing your first couple courses, super simple stuff. Look for their track record. Have they been doing it a long time? Do they have a long-standing business, or have they changed the offer a couple months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago? How long have they been around? What type of results they're getting? Do they have the type of business that you want? Do they have the type of lifestyle that you want? I think a lot of people get sucked into wanting to scale their business to monumental levels, but they don't really want that lifestyle and they don't want that business either. So I think just write down what it is you exactly want in a coach, and do your research pretty thoroughly. And in terms of like the social proof, look with a very critical and analytical eye, because even that can be faked sometimes, and sometimes it can be blown out of proportion. So just, yeah, I think just do your research is a big one.
I think in business as well, you've got to be like, I don't know if maybe this is just me built up over time. Similar sort of thing. I reckon 70% of things I did were great. 30% was like lighting it on fire.
Yeah.
I find now I am like very skeptical to be proven otherwise. I'm happy to be proven wrong, but you have to prove me wrong now, I suppose. Because, I definitely have jumped into things to go like, I like this person, I trust them. And now I kind of look back at that instinct, and it's like, you got to realize you're part of a process that is designed to make you feel that way.
Yep.
So like, I don't know. I'm not sure if it's great advice or not, but I'm almost like err on everything with like an air of skepticism, because the good people kind of can shine through, and over time there'll be another chance to work with that person.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not going away.
I think don't rush the process of wanting to work with someone or get like with a coach, because when you're in desperate need, you make bad decisions. And for example, in my industry right now, something that's really rampant is sales trainers. And just as there's coaches that coach coaches, there's sales trainers that train sales trainers that train sales trainers. And it's become a very, very big space of misinformation, and it's very confusing. And yeah, these companies are designed to really make you think that you need more sales training, but you simply don't. So I think just really think with a very critical and analytical lens. Do I really need this? And is this the right thing for me and my business?
I like that. I think that's I think there's the other side of like, particularly when you're starting, obviously there's the financial burden kind of thing. And typically if it's going to hurt, it'll be earlier on.
Yeah.
But I think there's also like that time commitment, and probably I would assume, correct me if I'm wrong, now why you're probably more skeptical. It's like, I'm going to pay for a coach. I'm not just investing the money. I'm investing my time to implement and do all this sort of stuff, which like,
Absolutely.
That becomes a lot more valuable as you progress in your career.
1,000%. It changes from when you're beginning stages of doing business or making money online or whatever aspect it is. It's like, am I willing to lose this 3, 4, 5, 10K? But yeah, as you move further into running your own business or further in your career, it just becomes so much of like, what is the time that I could lose doing this, and what's the opportunity cost? I reckon I've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars this year just by doing the wrong thing. So it's not the 10, 15, 20 grand that I lost. It's literally multiple 6 figures in opportunity costs by not being able to have the system in place for what I wanted in the aspect of business that I wanted.
You have a very interesting way that you look at things. Like, you've mentioned a few times now that if you don't do this outcome, what's it going to cost you? Or something else earlier on that I forget the specific of what you said. But when do you feel you learn that? Like, specifically as well in context of bettering your situation and letting go maybe a previous life or the people around you, because given where you're at, did you ever struggle with that friendship group dynamic where you felt like you were trapped in that before you could, go out on your own and do your own thing and be your own person and experience the world as it is? Because you looked at it through that lens of, well, if I don't do this, that's the opportunity cost.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll answer the friends aspect here in a second, but the first thing that I learned in sales, which is a part of my process and part of what I've learned in sales, is like cost of an action, right? So asking the prospect in a sales conversation, what is the costs of not actually changing the situation or getting a more efficient process of doing things? That's pretty much the question. It's like, what are you going to do if nothing changes and you continue using this process and don't get the result you're looking for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years? And so ever since I've known that question, it's very simple. Just asking myself the question, like, what happens if this does continue and what are the ramifications if it does, basically? So I'm very like self-critical from that lens, and I've been taught that by mentors from a very early age. So that's the way I view things. And when it comes to like friend circles and things like that, for sure, like I'm sure like as Australians, it's pretty common to have like the tall poppy syndrome. So I haven't had an aspect where I've like had to fully cut friend circles off, but more or less naturally kind of feathered away, I guess, as like growth has happened in different areas and there's different things I'm interested in. More of my close circles more become people who are in the line of work that I'm in, or they run their own business and they have similar problems and similar values.
You're in an interesting spot at the moment. I think a lot of people that, start business, start it for like, obviously to try and increase their income. And, particularly when you start, you think you want to make $1 billion, but we can talk about that later.
Sure.
But the other thing is like time and location freedom. I think like that's a really cool thing that like you've done recently as well. In the last year, you said that you've moved to Dubai. Could you talk to that a little bit about like the whole, how have you found, I suppose being able to work from wherever you want?
Yeah, I mean, I've really only like had that geographical freedom for, I would say, the last 3 years, I would say. When I was like, maybe like 4 years, but I've kind of really actively using it the last 3 years. I went to Bali for the first time and worked overseas and things like that. But more or less like the freedom around like moving to Dubai per se, or having the flexibility. Is that the main thing?
Yeah, just the flexibility. Obviously, I think Dubai is a whole other discussion that we can get into after this as well, because I think there probably are a lot of creatives that are interested in like what that looks like. So, I mean, the world's kind of moving towards that, but let's get into that in a sec.
So more of like, what is it like to have the freedom? Is that the main thing?
Yeah. And just the whole concept of like knowing that you can actually like, I mean, you with a make money online offer and that whole space, there is really that opportunity to get out of your hometown, get out of where you're used to being able to live and get a job or work wherever and move around.
I mean, it's pretty liberating. On the YouTube channel now, we have like 28 case studies of like people who've taken from like 0 to 10K a month. Hope fingers crossed for 40 early next year. But like it just doesn't get old. It's such a crazy thing to get used to, from having that flexibility to travel, but also earn while you move. On the way here, flying from Dubai to Australia, I recorded a YouTube video, and one of the things I said in the segments was that how lucky you are to be born in a time, in a world that we have access to the internet, because only in the last 10, 15 years have you really honestly been able to travel and have that geographical independence and be able to go where you want to go while making money on the move. I've met entrepreneurs that live all across the world, and it is insane. It's almost like a superpower. You're able to travel where you want to and earn from your laptop. It's a pretty surreal feeling. Like with the Dubai move, I just decided that I wanted to go to Dubai. I was living in Vietnam for the past 2 months prior, and I can practically go anywhere whenever I like. It's an insane freedom. With high ticket closing, which is what I teach, or high ticket sales, you unlock that to a degree, but you're still ultimately stuck to a schedule and your availability and time zones and things like that. But you can always just get an offer in a different time zone. You can go work US time zone, Europe time zone, whatever it is that you want. So yeah, it's pretty liberating, I'd say.
Well, it's one of those things that's like, I mean, let's not get into AI or whatever, because, with everyone thinks their jobs can be replaced or whatever. But I still think there's always going to be a place for like a human person to be doing sales. And same with the creative space, I always think that that's going to be a high demand thing, even though there is all these other tools and software coming out. I think for creatives, I think even like knowing that you can move to Dubai and probably get work pretty easily if you're good at what you do, right? Like there's a lot of great people there, that business people that need that, need someone to come in and just do that for them, because they're, I think that's probably one thing that I think is big for, probably the one thing that we kind of can, like you said with timelines, like that's probably the one thing we can guarantee in terms of a return is the time that we can save the clients, as opposed to just focusing on the result side of things. So I suppose I find that a very cool thing for creatives to hear. How do you find Dubai? You got any other places that you really love as like the digital nomad, kind of, if you want to use that as a phrase?
For sure. I think there's different spaces, right? Different places for different stages you're at in business. Like, I think at the more beginning stages of business, even up if you're really successful, Bali's a great place, and Thailand and like these types of places can be good when you're first starting out, or even if you're super successful. There's a lot of people that make big money there. But I think if you really want that like really big level up, Dubai is one of the best places to be. The standards are raised, people are driven, people are hungry, and you meet just serious winners over there. And it's just a very good environment. I found initially the move quite intimidating at first. I didn't really like it when I went there in October, to be honest, last year. But it's the people that make the place. So as I started to build up my network and get to know more people, I've loved it. I already missed Dubai, and I've only been gone 24, 48 hours. I'm looking forward to going back in 3 weeks. So yeah, Dubai is a great environment or a great city if you know how to use it correctly. And yeah, you can meet some really cool people there.
And what do you mean by use it correctly?
Like there's always different sides to a city, right? If you're going there for a certain lifestyle, you can have that. And you can spend lots of money if you want to. Yeah, I know friends that spend lots of money every single month on personal lifestyle expenses. Whereas for me, it doesn't really matter either way. Like lifestyle expenditure is still relatively low and below my means. But again, you can use the city how you want to. You can use it for business, or you can kind of get lost in the sauce and go out partying and all that type of stuff. There's always two sides to every place. The same thing as like Bali. You can go out and party a lot and you can get distracted and lose focus. Or there's always a side of the city or the place in Bali where, people are more focused, people are more driven. There's certain communities and groups that are just more focused around business and being driven.
For you, It sounds like you're very routined in nature. What are some of your outlets? Like, is it all business for you, or do you have your outlets of, reading, different sports, different things?
I think my biggest problem is that like I really enjoy business. As funny as
There's
that
nothing wrong
sounds.
with that at all.
Yeah, but it's like I probably working towards next year, working towards like having hobbies that are outside of business and these type of things. I've just really enjoyed seeing like monetary results, and the more I learn in business, obviously the more money I make. So it's like I've really enjoyed that aspect, but no, I don't really have too many outlets. I've obviously, as we spoke about before, I've picked up reading recently, but not like too intensely. But no, not specifically.
It's funny. I'm sort of a lot more on the business minus side of thing. I have to really like force myself to go and do a hobby. Like,
Yeah, same.
Was playing golf weekly for a bit because I had some friends I was going regularly with. And they went to another course. I don't have the time to go out to that one now. But it's funny, since stopping that membership, and like a lot of those other, like that sort of just died, kind of thing. It's interesting, I think, for if you are like obsessed about what you do, it can be, yeah, you kind of got to force yourself in a way to like get a hobby.
Yeah, exactly
It's
right.
a weird concept.
It was a funny conversation I had with a CEO of a company that I work for in sales, and he basically called me out in the onboarding interview, and he said, it was like 2 or 3 years ago, I think, and he's like, "Man, what are your hobbies outside of sales?" I'm like, "Nothing, bro. Like this is all that I do." And he's like, "You're so boring, and you need to change. Like you need to do something." Like he was telling me that his hobby was, I think it was building like his own aquarium or something like that, like a mini aquarium, and that's yeah. He's like, "I know it's odd, but it's something," and he's like, "It's not, you're not like that interesting of a person if all that you do is business and you just focus on business. I think it helps if you've got something outside of that for relationships and friendships outside of it, so you can connect on a different aspect rather than just thinking about business all the time."
What do you think about the ocean?
What do you mean?
Scuba diving.
I love scuba diving actually.
You got your ticket?
I probably might look at doing that in the future. I haven't. There's like I think the deepest diving pool in the world in Dubai. I haven't been yet, but no, I love scuba diving. It's great.
I love my scuba. That's my outlet, by the way.
Awesome.
Absolutely love it. There's something about having this adrenaline rush of like your life's in your hands, but it's so peaceful in the same breath that I find just is, for me, at the switch off that I need, because I'm naturally just a very overthinker, stress head. And for me, that just calms me down for whatever reason. So,
Because you have to be present. Like you can't not be present underwater. Like you're gonna die without it. So yeah. I mean that's a great outlet. Maybe I might consider taking that up more seriously then.
Hey, well, if you're ever in, if we ever cross over and you're in Bali, great spot to learn. Nice, cool waters, warm waters. Sorry.
Nice.
Down here, we actually have some of the best diving across Australia.
Yeah.
People just don't know about.
But it's really cold.
It's really cold.
Really cold.
Really cold, and the weather surge and stuff like that is pretty brutal. But
that's a great outlet, actually.
Interesting to hear. For you, you mentioned earlier on that you have a very small team. I think that's so interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I kind of just did everything myself up until recently. Now I have a salesperson. I have 2 coaches who is also, one of them is a salesperson. But yeah, I've been able to build the business to I have in the way that I have up until recently completely by myself. So like the last 18 months have been running, probably like 15 of that have been just on my own. So I took the sales calls, I did the coaching, I did the content, I did the marketing, I did everything. I just found no need to really hire anybody else. Obviously, I'd get like a contractor to do like my thumbnails and stuff. I wouldn't do that on my own. But now just very small, lean team. I think most businesses are bloated and have way more team than they actually need. So yeah, we just kept it very lean, very small and profitable.
in that hiring, how important, or how do you like to really make sure you're getting the right hire? Because there are so many, like at this day and age, it's so easy to fill up an interview pipeline of 500 people. And how do you like to filter it?
It's really interesting. Like my team is comprised of two others, and the other two, like the two people, have been people that I've been working together with for a long time, and another one's a really good friend. So it's a mindset coach, a sales coach, and a closer. Obviously, the close and the sales coach double in the same person. Ultimately, hiring through your network is the big one. Nowadays it's more harder than ever to get hired through traditional methods. How many people that you hear go to university and can't get jobs? It's not just for the fact it's theoretical knowledge and lack of skills and experience, but it's because hiring is so difficult nowadays because there's an overwhelming abundance of people who apply to the same jobs. It's like hundreds of people that apply, if you throw up a job post. So ultimately what I found is that if you're trusting your business with someone that you've just met on the street, you're ultimately taking a risk. So what I did and what I recommend to most people is hiring through your personal network and the people that you know, because at least then you have a verifiable source that you know personally can vouch for this person. You can have references and things like that, but these can also always be faked, right? That's always a possibility. So, yeah, I recommend anyone in your personal network for the role is going to be more than ideal because, yeah, trusting your business with someone through like a random application, a job post it's ultimately a risk at the end of the day.
So I find that even like who you're going for your first hire as well, like the amount of people that will go to like try and don't like to do sales and they try to hire a salesperson just to like abdicate responsibility for that essential part of growing the business.
Yeah.
I think that to your point around like just like if you're going to hand over things in your business, like even like stepping stones, I suppose, like what are like the smaller things, like, yeah, if it gets, it might be super time consuming, but realistically, if it gets delayed by a day or 2 days, or if there's a mistake, you can pick up on it. It's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, as in like looking for like what are the expectations of people being hired, or like who should you hire first, or?
Yeah, I think like, just in that whole conversation, like, 'cause I suppose you're training salespeople. They're probably looking for positions at different business. So if they're going through that hiring process, they're, I suppose, also interviewing the business owner just as much as that person's interviewing them, right? So like, would you advise them not to go and is that one of the red flags? Don't go work for someone that's like not good at sales, that's trying to hand it off to someone else.
Absolutely. I think a really, really, really big thing, like obviously I coach my clients on how to look for the right offers where they can make good money. But my main, very strong recommendation to founders and business owners and creatives is that, like Job said, don't hire because you don't like sales, because that's ultimately where things go very wrong, because you don't understand how to sell yourself. So how are you going to manage and teach and coach and hold a standard expectation for somebody else? You can't. And as a creative, you're just going to let the salesperson walk all over the business because you yourself don't understand what's good and what's not. So it really isn't ideal to, if you're not good at sales, just throw someone on there, because I can guarantee you, it seems like there's this big myth or narrative that you just throw a salesperson and into the fire or at the problem and it'll just fix itself. Far from it. Definitely far from it. You need to, especially if you're at the earlier stages of a company, like I've gone to the point where I've built a business 6 figures a month, me selling myself. But like around 40, 50K a month would be my recommendation, if at all possible. Because something to keep in mind is that at that level of business, you can only attract a certain level of sales talent, because you can't remunerate them highly. So you're not going to attract an A player at low early stages, because they're going to be attracted to how much they can earn and how long the business has been around. So it's very rare you're going to attract someone, let alone keep them. So if you are going to hire somebody, it has to be someone who's willing to learn and grow the business ultimately. And you've got to make an attractive proposition for them to be able to earn money. If they don't have that, they're not going to stick around, and that's going to waste so much time hiring, firing. Most business owners think it's the salesperson that's a problem, but it's most definitely usually the business owners and the founders' problem. There's not enough foundation and structure for you to attract sales talent, but also keep it.
I suppose for that business owner that might be thinking that they just want to hire out because they don't like sales and they're not sure what's going on, they want to throw something at the problem, what are some of those things that should be set up before you should bring in a salesperson?
I think with any goal, right, you should be clear on what is the objectives and the goals of hiring a salesperson? Who do you want, right? If you don't know who you want, you're also going to make bad decisions. You're going to hire the wrong person. So I think just become clear on who you want, like what personality you want, what traits are you looking for? Do you want them to have a track record? Do you want to have proof? Do you want them to have closed a certain amount? What is it you want in the first place? And then have an established sales process that you're confident in, that you've used yourself, that is bringing clients currently. You can't just throw the salesperson in on the deep end and just expect them to figure things out. Nor can you expect a salesperson to close as well as you, the founder, because they are just some random person selling for your business, right? I can sell way better than anybody else I'll ever hire can because I have that authority. I'm the founder, and that's fine. But I think just an established sales process, like a script, structure, know what you're looking for in a salesperson, KPIs, leads, right? A lot of business owners hire salespeople who don't even have leads in the first place to sell. CRM, if possible, it's probably going to be pretty useful. Track all your leads, where they've come from, and where they're in the sales process. And I think those would be probably the main things I can think of.
Another one I think is like an interesting one, particularly for creatives, is like knowing who you don't want to work with.
Yes.
Because you could bring in a salesperson and just like they could be a great closer. I've talked to some salespeople. I think you met Danny Burchard before.
Yeah.
Could go into anything and like sell really well if he wants to, but like he could also be bringing in a lot of really bad people. If he was just full on closer mind, I'm going to bring in every single person.
Yep.
I know he doesn't sell like that anymore, but he's very open that he has. That's kind of how you start off. Particularly, I'm sure you probably had a similar thing when you start off.
You sell everybody.
Yeah.
Closer
mode. But yeah, definitely for that would be something I'd say on that's something I feel like I've learned a lot over like the last 2 years just for myself of like, yeah, we are interviewing the client just as much as they're interviewing us. Right?
100%.
Do you find that with like people that are coming into your program as well, you're kind of like, hey, what kind of things are you kind of trying to push away?
I have definitely pushed people away before. I do it quite often, actually. So is my closer. But I mean, people who aren't willing to work hard, but most people that come to me, it seems that way. Obviously, I have no idea what's going to happen once they pay for the training program. That's when the real work starts. But yeah, just I guess it's hard. Like I have like a general vibe with people that I can kind of understand they're going to be a good fit. You know, out of 250 people in the last 18 months, I picked a few bad fits, but pretty rarely. I don't know. I guess you can kind of just tell in the sales call. You can ask certain questions to gauge like their commitment and like these type of things, but really you're never going to know until they pay you. I've had many friends who have done few services and it seemed great on the sales call, and then they're a nightmare client on the back end. So you can try, but I think it's more of like an experiential thing. You can kind of tell with people. Yeah, that's probably my main advice.
Given the fact of what you do, you must give a lot of you must hold a lot of people accountable to what you're teaching, whatnot. You've got to give a lot of feedback and constructive criticism.
Yeah.
And I see people do this a whole bunch of different ways, but how do you actually like to give people advice that they're going to not completely just disregard straight off the bat, that they can actually take in and implement?
I think for me, probably one of my biggest weaknesses is I can synthesize and I can explain ideas to people quite well. But as far as like being a coach, like it's a very different story, because I want to tell people things, but sometimes I have to really just slow down and help them ask questions that help them come to their own conclusion so they actually integrate the idea. Because again, I can explain things, but it's not going to be really taken on per se and integrated. So something that I've worked on recently with a coach of mine, Alex, who has basically been like the founder of Client Success for publishing.com, which is like a 9-figure coaching. It's one of the biggest coaching companies in space. It's one of a company in Hormozi's portfolio. So he's been teaching me and coaching me to get better at client success. And that's one of the things we've worked on. Like he'll pick apart a coaching call and he's like, I hope you don't mind picking this apart. And I was like, dude, I love it. It's super helpful. Ultimately the way I do it is just asking questions instead of I know the answer. Same thing as sales. Just asking people the question so they can ultimately come to their own conclusion is generally the way I like to do it. I know the answer every single time, so I have to take a deep breath before I tell them and just slowly get them to unwind.
That's super interesting because that's definitely something that I'm struggling with at the minute. Naturally, just try to be, I'm very fast paced most of the time. And usually it's just at a detriment of someone else's learning opportunity. So it's good. That's great feedback.
Yeah. I mean, the quote that I got from Dale Carnegie, one of my mentors, Jeremy, said, a man convinced against his will is of the same opinion still. So really, you can tell someone something all that you want, but they won't integrate it until they tell themselves that or come to their own conclusion around the topic. So if you're trying to convince someone of something, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. One of my other mentors, Matt, said, what the prospect says is gospel and what you say is trash. So it's the same premise as the quote previously. It's like, get the person to understand the ideas in their own terms. Otherwise, it's just not going to be valuable for the person at all.
I find that with definitely in our space as well, like people come into, well, whether it's a sales conversation or just generally, a lot of it, there's so many opinions on what works on social media and what you should be doing. And I find that like, let's just talk about sales. When they come to that call, if they've got a really hard set way of like, oh, this particular platform's a waste of time, or, you know, doing videos like this is a waste of time, or this shouldn't cost this, and all those sort of opinions that they can have. Yeah, when you try to, even if you can convince them otherwise, to give it a go on the other side because you're telling them, I find that the whole way throughout afterwards, they're looking for reasons to like prove it wrong.
100%.
They're just trying to like, they've still got that bias because you didn't, even though you might have like got them to try the other way or like kind of brought them over, they've still got that, what is it, confirmation bias? Is that the?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. I just find that very interesting, particularly like you said, with a space that is so subjective. You know, and I suppose in a way, like obviously sales has a very tangible outcome, but there are a lot of variables that you can't control with a sale that are outside your control as well. It's like in a way that like if you're reviewing a sales call, someone could have technically done it perfect, right? But they were talking to the wrong person, shouldn't have bought all of that sort of thing. So like, yeah, how do you find that you sort of bring that in to that space as well?
in terms of being slow with people.
Well, I suppose, no, just like you've got with your clients that come in
Mm-hmm.
and they're trying to review things and look back at like what they've done. Are there times where you kind of look at it and go like, hey, actually did everything really well? Maybe there's just this small thing, but I don't know if we're just being nitpicky now. Like
100%. Yeah, that's exactly how I do it. You know, like especially with sales, there is thousands of data points of what you can improve. Maybe you could have said something differently. Maybe it was the timing, the cadence. Maybe it was your tone. Maybe it was a reframe. Maybe it was you needed to pause with this certain word. There's a million things you can always correct and improve. But ultimately, like with sales, like the main principle and guidance is that you have a process which you follow that works the majority of the time. Sometimes you're going to have people that you speak to that are just weirdos. Like that's the way that I accept it. You know, it's like, look, you get on a call with somebody. I have clients come to me who are making 10, 15K a month, and they will have a day where they go, oh, kind of like I can't sell and blah, blah, blah. I had this terrible day. And usually it's like one or two calls they look at, and it's just like they talk to a weird prospect that day, or they had a circumstance that they weren't used to, and then they just throw out their competence out the window for the rest of time. But in reality, it just takes someone with experience to say, no, you did perfectly fine. That person was just a very strange prospect, and that's fine. As long as I know that my process works the majority of the time, that's all that I care about. You know, if I get a weird prospect, or, you know, I've had people who hang up on credit card details before, I don't react or change my sales process in any way. Like, I just think, okay, that was weird. And I just move on.
I think that's really important, because I do think you can get in your head a lot with sales. I mean, like you can, like creatives can with any other part of the business, can be easy to look at a call and like be so like harsh on yourself. Like, what went wrong?
Yeah.
Why didn't that close? Like sometimes it's just good to just move on.
Yeah.
This is what it is.
If you're confident in your process and you know it's good and you've done it multiple times, if something goes wrong or something was strange on the call, reflect, see if there's any way that you can improve. But ultimately, if you're confident in your process, there's not really like a whole lot you can change. You can always improve slightly with different subtle adjustments. But yeah, what's worked for me is I've taken thousands of sales calls, so I know how the conversation goes pretty well by now. When there is some deviations, doesn't surprise me. Or, you know, for example, 2 years ago, a prospect cried in really intensely cried because I just asked her questions. And she was so off-put that she didn't even hear it at my presentation. It was actually Ben's brother, Drew, who I was selling for.
Right.
And she just exited the call. And she's just like, oh, no, I feel too vulnerable to like even hear what you have to offer. I'm going to go. I was like, I apologize if I offended you in any way, but I mean, these are just questions at the end of the day. And she left the call. Do I feel terrible about that? No. Does it change the way I sell? No. I didn't think of it for more than 5 minutes because, again, how many times that happened out of thousands of calls? Very rarely, if any. So I don't look at these strange circumstances and take them on board as a reflection of my sales ability. I just look at it as, oh, that was weird. Oh, well, just move on. Yeah.
There can be a lot of weird stuff that happens on sales calls too.
You're dealing with people,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, everyone's met weird people before in their life. It's the same thing with sales. Like, you will have weird circumstances. You're dealing with people. That's fine. Yeah.
What's the weirdest thing you've ever had happen on a sales call?
I haven't had too many strange experiences. Mine are more so people just, devaluing what we do.
Mm.
That's always the biggest thing.
Yeah.
And I've always taken it as a personal attack because it's, it's the nature.
Well, how can you not?
That's the nature of the creative industry, right?
Yeah.
But it's really interesting listening to the way that you speak about sales. Because you're right. Like, you do need to just disconnect what the outcome is and follow the process, because that's what we tell our clients to do anyway. And in our process when we bought them. So
yeah, I think probably the weirdest thing I've personally had on a sales call.
That's not the crying.
That's not the crying. I've had a few weird things, but I think probably one of the strangest was when I was working with Drew, Ben's brother, and we were taking sales calls together at that point. So I would do the majority of the discovery, and Drew would do the presentation because I didn't understand that yet, and we're just knocking deals back and forth, 10, 20, 30K deals. It was a good time. And we had a call coming up with a life coach, and I was like, life coaches are always a strange bunch of individuals. I have a feeling this is going to be a strange call. And she was just like, yeah, sure. No worries. We'll see how we go. Loaded up in the car, which if you've done sales for a while, you know, someone who's loading up in a car is usually not the best sign. They're not really paying attention. They're not focused. And especially when it's on their phone, someone who loads up on Zoom, they're not really that, you know, focused on you, and they're not really respecting you in a way to certain aspects. It's not to say you can't sell those people, but it's just not the best context. She loads in the car's moving. I asked if she's driving. She said no, someone else is driving. So she's just kind of like holding up her phone like this, and I'm like, oh dear, here we go. And as I start the sales process, she's like got like a green screen filter on, and she's like moving around, walking outside, wind blowing through her hair on like a sales call for like a 10, 20K product. And I was like, are you okay? Like, did you want some time to sit down and focus? And she's like, yeah, no, it's fine. And she proceeded to sit down and start rolling a joint mid-call. And Drew and I were just sitting there looking at each other, and I was like, I'm going to end this call if you don't. And then Drew kind of just shut the call down. It was very funny.
Wow.
Yeah.
Rolling a joint is a interesting finish to that one.
Yeah.
Far out.
Yeah.
It's an interesting take on, I've never seen it like that. You know, how people present on the call and what that, how that respect is for you on the other side of the call, putting the time aside.
Well, you want to think about it this way. How much attention are you really giving someone if you're looking at Zoom on a phone? You're distracted. You're not really focused. You know, I've had clients come to me before and ask why they didn't close a sale with a guy who's out on a park bench in lunch during work, in the park, just like looking at his phone. I'm like, dude, how could you really close that? The person's just like got birds around and people walking around. Like, they don't really have that focus, and you're losing a lot of authority when you do that because they don't respect you enough to get a laptop and sit there and give you their undivided attention. They just, I think the status and authority is lost. Don't get me wrong. I've closed people in that circumstance, but you can tell the amount of attention they're giving you is not there. Yeah.
That's super interesting.
You had a few joint rollers.
I haven't had a few joint rollers, but looking back on a few calls recently, you definitely see a little bit of a correlation on that.
Yeah. Like,
super
just telling the prospects before, like, hey, just make sure that you're a laptop and you've got undivided attention, you're in a quiet space, because, like, if it's in a noisy environment or if it's on the phone, it just is not as impactful if it's just a laptop and it's a bigger screen and there's just so much more attention there.
And would you suggest, I suppose if this happens again for any other creative, do you suggest like calling that out and going like, hey, like, looks like there might be a few things going on. Is there maybe a better time that we can speak? Or are you more blunt than that? Or
I think if the expectation's set appropriately before the call, where you actually say, hey, this is where I want you to be. This is what I want you to do for this set time. I want you to be available. I want this context. If you've asked for that, it's kind of appropriate to reschedule. Because in sales, it really is about status. Like, that's really what it is. So, you know, when I was like 21 selling, you know, tradies, business owners that do 7 figures, multiple 6 figures a month, the reason I could sell those people and they opted into my frame is because that's the level of authority that I held. So it is very much an authority game. If you haven't set the right expectations, it's pretty unwarranted to ask someone to reschedule for something that you didn't actually ask for.
Mm.
But, yeah, I think just set the expectations correctly first. If they show up after those expectations being crossing the line, then you're losing a lot of status, a lot of frame if you're just kind of letting it slide. So, yeah.
I suppose as well, if they do look super distracted, if there is a bit going on, I think I've done it on someone just genuinely looks stressed, and it's like sometimes they're even looking for that like out. It's just a terrible time. It's like,
Yeah.
like, hey, should we just do another day? Like, is there a bit going on today? It's like, actually, yeah, today's fucked. Like, I would way prefer to like jump on another call later on the week or something.
For me personally, if someone loads up on the phone, I'm most likely going to discontinue the call. I've very rarely made sales from that format, that context. I have it recently, but he was comparing me to a competitor, and he was having a call the same day. So I was like, I may as well just take it. I made the sale anyway. But yeah, like even the competitor sales team, which worked well for me, they didn't take the sales call because he took it in the car. So it's like, you know, in some circumstances, most circumstances, no, but sometimes you can kind of get a bit of a feel. Like if it's a busy business owner, sometimes like that kind of just happens. But yeah, I've very rarely made sales off of that context.
Yeah, I mean, but, well, there's a lot of tradies as well that I know. Like we've done, we've got one client at the moment they're doing a job for. It's a builder. Very rarely we're gonna during the day catch him in the office.
Yep.
Like who's taking most of it's going to be phone calls from the car and stuff like that. Not driving, but like just pulled over, can take the call then in between a job, and that's just kind of. There's always context for sure.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting at.
Exactly.
I remember one coach I used to have. Just going back to like some of the when you're talking about the girl that cried and like the weird stuff. One coach was telling me about how he had thought the call went like super well, thought he nailed it, and the person was like ready to go, and he watched his and then they go like, oh, I just need to grab my card or whatever, and he's like, and they're on Zoom, and it's like the desk is here, I'm sitting here, and I go like walk out of the room back there. It's like Zoom, like the camera is like looking at the whole room, and you just watch the guy like come back in, like crawling on the ground, and come all the way up to like the desk and like come up and end the call because he didn't have the didn't want to tell him no.
Yep.
He's just watching this guy. What the fuck is this guy doing?
Yeah.
At the end of the call, he's like, "Oh, that's so weird." And he's like, I think I don't know whether he messaged him or said anything about it, but to me, that's the funniest thing I reckon I've heard happen on a sales call.
I've had that happen multiple times.
Someone crawl back into the room like that?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a lot of people struggle to say no, and it can be for a multitude of reasons. It can be the fact that they don't have the money, then too embarrassed to say that they don't have the funds together. There's just many reasons. And same thing is like when I see that happen, I don't go, "Oh, my sales process sucks." It's like, you know, they did that on their own fruition, and in sales, it's a funny thing we have, which is like if someone hangs up on credit card details, it's like a badge of pride almost, in the way that might sound weird, but you're kind of like maxing out the stats of a sales call to the point that if you didn't force someone into something, they literally felt such in a trance, or they felt such an obligation to make a change, they literally couldn't say no. So they imploded, they exited the Zoom call, they hung up on you, or they did like you just spoke about. It's actually a good thing. If you didn't pressure them into anything, which the way I sell is not in that way at all, you did a great job and you kind of finished the game per se. And there's nothing you really could have done. They just did what they needed to on their own fruition.
It makes sense because, yeah, I get what you're saying. Like, it's like you got to the end of they almost had to do something weird because they genuinely didn't feel like there was a good reason to say no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And like, you know, especially if you're good at sales, I'm so used to like unconscious, conscious, the questions that I ask, but I'm aware that the questions that I ask, they're NLP based, and they are, which is for people that don't know, neuro-linguistic programming. They're quite powerful, and you don't realize the state that someone gets taken into when you ask these questions. And quite literally, it can be the point where you start the call, you finish the call, and the person's just blinked. And a lot of the times people will say, "Oh, I can't believe it's been an hour that I've been talking to you." They just get into a state in a trance, and as soon as they put in their credit card details, they kind of just like wake up, they freak out, and they just implode. Like that's typically what can happen if you've done a really good job on a sales call. The amount of credit card hangups I've had is countless, like many, many, many times. Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
Just to divert, and like the last question I'd love to ask you is, I feel like a lot of business owners have no context of what a sales rep actually looks like in a business. They go, "Oh, I'm going to have to pay this, massive base salary. I'm going to have to pay huge commissions, and it's just never going to be worth it for me." What does a standard look like? For a sales rep?
It's an interesting question. I think there's always like the standard question, like what is the standard? I think if we're looking for a baseline of what you see across most businesses, in the high ticket sales coaching space, like information education, you can see 10%, you can see 20%. That's pretty much like the range you'll see across the board as like commissions of the cash that you bring into the business. So, for example, if your service is $10,000 and you close 2 payments, you're only going to pay the closer for what they actually bring in at the end of the day. It's mostly performance based in the industry that I'm in. If you're more traditional, there might be more of an expectation of a base and commissions and things like that. But typically it's off like a performance based role. And yeah, it's like commission only. The expectation is, again, very dependent on the role and what you want a salesperson to represent in your business. It can be full-length sales rep. It could be, I don't really know. Like there's just so many different roles and businesses, and I don't know. It's
too much of a broad. Yeah.
Last question is on the other side for people wanting to get into sales. Do you find like some of the because someone could be basing their decision off like which business they want to work for based on that commission or how much? My experience, I'm curious to hear what you think on this, is like some of the ones that offer like 20% are offering 20% for a very good reason. Like it's hard to bring people in. They're kind of like bringing people on that probably aren't too well sold on the offer. I'm sure there's exceptions and stuff, but then some of the ones that do mainly do like base plus like lower commission tend to be ones where like people are coming in often it's an easier sell kind of thing. Like even some people that come in for like solar, for example, is something that I've seen that with, but like people can earn a crap ton with solar because it's
huge amount of commissions.
Yeah.
I think you want to, it's very, the reason why I say like 10 to 20%, like what is the average? This is very dependent on your business and like the type of profit margins you have and operational costs and marketing, things like that. Like, for example, if you don't pay any money for marketing, well, maybe you can take a bit of a commission cut and increase the commission so it's more lucrative for the closer. I guess it's a kind of tough question to answer. I think with creative projects and creative businesses, it can be somewhat difficult because I'm not sure like the capacity you work with your clients, but I know that the project can differ from client to client. It can be personal. So yeah, I honestly don't know. I'm not too sure.
What about but just in the industries you're saying kind of thing, what do you typically like, I suppose for your students kind of thing, they come to with like an offer they're looking at, what are some of the things is that the biggest thing you look at? Like how much they can potentially earn off the thing, or is like, well, how many people they're actually selling in the first place?
I mean, I'll try and answer like pretty broadly of like what I tell my clients to look for. So, the people watching can have a bit of an idea of like what makes a business attractive to a salesperson. So again, it's going to depend from offer to offer, but 10 to 20% is like what you would see. So if a business does 6 figures, the salesperson's earning 10K a month, and so on, 220. For me, when I look at a business to work for and how I coach my clients is what level of marketing do they have? Quality and quantity. Where are they marketing? What platforms are they using? What content do they have up? Assessing the founder. What is their leadership qualities? What are they like? Assessing them in person, on a call. Do you vibe with them? Are they going to build a business with you? Are they going to have a good relationship moving forwards? Does the company have like a long-standing track record of have they been around, or are they more of like a newer type business? Do they have less proof of concept? A really big thing I look for when I'm like, if I was assessing a business to work for as well as my clients is proof of concept. Is there a salesperson already making the money that I want on the offer and in the company? Is the sales process proven as well? I think those are the main things that I pretty much coach my clients to look for. Again, there's probably like 50 questions we have in there of like how to grill a founder and a business owner, but that's like the general.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming on, Connor. Now, for people that might be interested in looking more into what you're doing and just seeing what you're up to, where's the best place to do that?
2 places. Instagram, so it's just Connor Healy _, and as well as my YouTube channel. You just search up my name, you'll find me there.
Awesome. Thanks very much for coming on, man.
No worries.